Alrighty guys, so the other day I showed you an interview that came from UFOs Around the World, which is basically, his name's Matt. He's pretty much the biggest TikTok account that talks about UFOs, right? And that video had never been seen before. It had only just been released to him after he had been talking to a source for over a year. I think it took a lot of time to develop trust and also for this source to feel confident enough to release this because things have happened in their life where people have lost their lives because of this stuff. So this was a big deal for them. And now this same source has also released these photos that we're going to be looking at today. Now I've gotten Matt's permission to show you that interview and show you these photos, but make sure you go check him out. His link will be in the comments. If you use TikTok, go check it out. Link in the description, sorry. That's UFOs Around the World. So this, the interviews that we saw is one of 9. There's 9 separate people who were all interviewed about the same incident that they all experienced together. And this happened off the coast of Peru on an island called San Gayan. Now, I think this was around 2014 that this incident happened. And in 2016, the person who we saw in that interview was found dead in his home, strangled. Okay. And that interview, if you watch the interview, he goes on to speak about how after he went to the authorities about what had happened, their encounter with non-human intelligence, basically white men who were obviously not Peruvian or South American started showing up at his house, taking photos of his house. And when he confronted them, it was clear they didn't speak Spanish. And then he was found dead not too long after. So you can kind of connect the dots with what was going on there. Basically, there was a lot of pressure to not air this documentary that was being put together with these interviews. So now this information has come out. I think Matt kind of convinced this person that, like, you know, this is the time with what's going on around the world. So what I want to do before we get into the actual story and look at these photos of what appear to be 3 to 4 foot tall greys, like your classic little child looking gray beings. These photos are honestly really compelling, especially one of them. But the story that goes along with it is really interesting as well. So what I want to do is, before we get into that, I want to give you some context about Peru and the area that we're talking about here, because this is a unique place, okay? And we're going to look at why. So we're going to jump over here and we're going to look at Google Earth. And first of all, I'm just going to take you to San Gayan Island, okay? So this is where the encounter that 9 people experienced with non-human intelligence took place. So you can see we are literally just off the coast here of Peru. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can kind of see where Lima is. Lima is the capital of Peru. Where are we? There we are. Okay, so actually I'll zoom in a bit for you guys. You can see there the distance between San Gayan Island, which is just here, is not far away from Lima. So this is the capital, what you could say is the busiest place in Peru. This is all happening not very far away, but this isn't the only thing that's nearby. So let's take a look into what else is there. So first of all, we've got probably the obvious one, which is Nazca. Okay, so Nazca is famous not only for the Nazca lines, which we're going to look at, I think, first. So this is Nazca. You've heard of the Nazca mummies, the Nazca lines. If you don't know what the Nazca lines are, I'll show you. These are the Nazca lines, and these are just a few of them, okay? The Nazca lines were originally about 100 large geoglyphs that were kind of visible from an aerial view that just depicted like weird looking little humanoids, animals, and just a whole range of things. There was originally about 100 of these things. And just last year, a Japanese study team, with the help of AI, have found another like 300. So these things are everywhere, all over the coastline here in this province called Nazca. And then, of course, we've also got the Nazca mummies, which, again, were these Nazca mummies, and this is just one photo example of one of them, were found in this area. Not just one, but lots of them have been found around this area, which is not too far from San Gayan Island either. So what else is around here? Well, if you've watched my TikTok, you would know about this one. This one's called the Atacama Giant. Now, given this one is a little bit further away, but we're still in Peru and we're still on the coastline of the ocean. And funnily enough, this one, I don't think I even brought in a photo because you can literally see it from Google Earth. Look at this thing. This is called the Atacama Giant. And it's basically a massive geoglyph that is obviously quite visible from the sky. And it's been there for a long, long time. And there's not really any clear answers on what it is. And the reason why I referred to my TikTok earlier is because I did a TikTok covering that this thing is on the Pope's robes. And that's obviously very strange. Now, this was apparently put on the Pope's robes when he went to Chile for a visit, and it's like some kind of sign of respect. I get that. I understand and accept that. But I think the pressing question is, why is this thing significant? And what is it? What does it represent? And why is it so significant that the Pope has agreed to wear it on his robes? So that's that one. And there's just one more thing I want to talk about, and I'm sure everyone's heard of this one before. I want to look at Machu Picchu, right? Because again, this is very close to San Gallen Island. And I'll just zoom out just quickly so you can see how close we are. So this is San Gallen Island here, right here. So if we go from here to Machu Picchu, you can see like we're obviously a bit more inland, but we're all working in the same vicinity here. And then obviously, why is Machu Picchu significant? Well, because it is one of the most, well, probably not, no, I wouldn't say the most ancient sort of civilization that's been discovered, but it's a very thorough and well-planned sign of a civilization that existed here that is 2.5 kilometers above sea level. Okay, so this is high up in the mountains, and just that in itself is kind of amazing. The fact that a city was able to be established and built here, but the way that it was built is even more interesting. None of these buildings and these things were established with mortar or bricks. Nothing. There's no binding agent in any of this stuff. It's all put together with stone that has been precisely cut to fit against the other. And that is how this structure still stands. Okay, so that is probably the most interesting thing, because this is the same kind of thing we see in Egypt, where these enormous heavy stones that have allegedly come from miles and miles away have been cut precisely with like laser precision. And that's what we're seeing here. I can't tell you where these rocks came from, but I can tell you they have been brought 2.5 kilometers above sea level, and a colony was established. So this is the place that we're talking about here when we talk about this story. And I just think that's kind of important to mention, because, you know, this hasn't just happened in London. This has happened at a place that is already full of very peculiar artifacts and things. Okay, so let's just keep that in the back of the mind there. Now, as part of the evidence that these people provided, let's just hop over here. As part of the evidence that these people provided, they kind of gave like a mini manifesto of this area and its history and the beings that have been spotted there, and like some example cases that have happened between 2001 and 1990. Okay, so we're going to look through a couple of those first and sort of look at the area that these things are taking place, and then we'll get into the photos. So here we go. This is the first one. So I will read this out to you guys as well. I'm just going to pull it up so it's a bit bigger for me. So we can see here, it says, these details are from the perspective of the inhabitants of the town of San Gallen. All descriptions below were based on the accounts and compilation of nearly 100 local witnesses. Now, I don't have 100 to go through. There's only 3, but that's probably a good thing. The beings are regularly described as animals or playful children. No harm to people caused by these creatures has been reported. The only incident described where a human life might have been endangered dates back to the year 1975, when a fisherman tried to get too close to one and received a strong electric shock. This might have been an exaggeration or a story created to scare children and keep them away from these creatures. They are almost always seen inside or near the caves when the tide is low. Formerly known as the Bald Ones, they were seen at dawn or late at night. These sightings date back to December 8th, 1955, during the enactment of Law Number 12324 under the government of President Manuel A. Odria, when the town of Paracas was founded. I probably butchered half of those names, but bear with me. So the physical characteristics based on the testimonies of fishermen and locals. A size is approximately 1.1 meters. This is almost like 3 feet on the dot. They have no conclusive data for their speed on land. Their voice and sound apparently do not emit any sounds, only heavy breathing. The smell, one defining characteristic of these beings is the presence of a nauseating odor emanating from their damp skin. Many locals have described this smell as unbearable or even as a sign of their arrival, detectable from nearly 50 meters away. Now, if you've been paying attention to this channel, you would know that that is a super, super common characteristics that we hear, especially when we're hearing about, in particular, encounters that have happened within South America. Obviously, the Varginha incident is a classic one for that in Brazil. And basically, the hospital that the being got taken to was stunk out for like 3 weeks. So, and that's not the only case. This is a recurring theme that we hear about. So that's just an interesting little dot to connect there. Continuing on. Behavior. There's not enough data to provide a conclusive evaluation of their behavior or characteristics. However, we can outline some events with approximate dates to better understand them. So now we're going to get into the first little encounter story. July 2001, Mario Innes and Claudio were on the shore of Culebra Beach at approximately 3:30 a.m. drinking alcohol when two of these beings in poor health approached them abruptly. They claimed to be fleeing from something but could not confirm what it was. The reaction of the three young individuals was unexpected since such phenomena were a daily occurrence for them. That doesn't make sense. The reaction of the three young individuals was unexpected since such phenomena were a daily occurrence for them and they had been familiar with these creatures since childhood. Right, so I think they're saying it was unexpected because they're familiar and they don't usually approach people. That's kind of what I'm gathering from that. Initially, one of the youths in a mocking tone offered a beer to the taller of the bold ones. Upon smelling it, the creature rejected it and tossed it aside near the water. This caused surprise and laughter among the three friends. These beings returned to the caves and were never seen again. It is believed that the caves provide proximity to or even direct access to the depths of the ocean. Locals speculate that these mysterious creatures may have retreated to an underwater habitat, vanishing into a world beyond human reach. Now, giving aliens beers. Yes, I know, it's kind of it's crazy, isn't it? It makes you want to type a real angry comment about how bullshit this story is. I know, I get it. It's okay, relax. I'm just the messenger. It's an interesting story, though. And first of all, there's the connection to water there, and the fact that these things kind of reside around the water. This is, if you remember, you can see here on this little map, this is San Gallion Island there. So that little island off to the side is where the encounter in the interview happened, and this is just a separate case that happened, I think, 15 years prior to that, just on the other coastline. So again, this is just all kind of corroborating data. Whatever you want to think about aliens getting offered beers, I don't really care. I'm just telling you the story. So let's go to the next one. So this is December 1998. So we're kind of going backwards in time a little bit here. This person was returning home via the Salinas de Otama route, which is around 11 p.m. So this is like a main road coming down the coast, when he encountered a dense fog that forced him to stop. Andreas began to move forward slowly when suddenly a pale and bold human figure, according to his account, appeared in the middle of the road, naked and wearing dark glasses. So obviously this is referring to an alien encounter. And I feel like if something is dark, if it's dark and foggy, what we see as a gray could instantly, the first thing you could think of is a naked, bald man with sunglasses on, right? Like, I could understand why that would be your first thought rather than, is that an alien? That makes sense. He thought it was a drunk trying to rob him, so he accelerated and hit the figure. Okay, interesting first response, but fair enough. Only to hear a wail so loud that it nearly deafened him, and to this day, Wednesday, January 2016, he recalls it vividly. After sharing what had happened with his friends, they assured him that it was not a human, as the road stretches nearly 100 kilometers of dirt track with no paved sections, and UFO sightings there are common. We leave it to the viewer to draw their own conclusions. So I think that's cool. And again, you can see that this thing isn't really, the way this is written, it's like they don't really care if you believe them or not. Neither do I. They're just letting you draw your own conclusions, which is what everyone should do, right? No one should ever tell you what to think. You should question anyone who tells you what to think. You should use your own brain and come to your own conclusions. And I think that's what this is encouraging you to do, which I think is great. So this is the last one. This one's July 1990. Mr. Green, let's call him that as he requested his real name not to be used, decided at the age of 44 to take his 6-year-old niece out to play in his garden, which faced the beach. Around 10:30 p.m., Mr. Green began hearing his niece playing with her imaginary friends, whom she called plate faces. At the time, he thought it was just a child's game. However, the next day, he found more than 200 footprints in his yard, approximately 10 centimeters long, left by a 3-toed creature with almost human-like feet. When he called the police, his report was mocked. When asked to draw her imaginary friends, the child created a sketch. This drawing, dating back to 1990 when she was 8 years old, remains as evidence. However, as time has passed today, she claims to remember nothing. Now, the reason why I started sounding a bit funny as I was reading that towards the end there is because I just realized that it's saying this drawing dating back to 1990 when she was 8 years old remains as evidence, but at the start of the story, which took place in 1990, it says she's 6 years old. Now, this doesn't automatically pull the whole story apart. I mean, the whole thing is a lie. It could simply just be an error in the writing. But it's just something I just noticed, so I'm going to point it out to you because I don't really care if you believe this or not. I'm just providing you some really interesting evidence. So that's that part done. So let's get into the actual photos, right? Because that's obviously what you all want to see, and I've been yapping for 15 minutes. So there are some context for these images, right? So there's 3 different encounters here spread across 4 images, and I'm going to read you the context and then show you the picture. So this is the first one. So as you can see in the photos, there are 3 separate events. The first 2, you have 2 pictures of a gray being walking along the road near the sea called Otuma. So this is like the same road near the ocean that we just heard about in those last stories. The local used a flash to walk at dawn because sometimes cars come from a distance. These photos would have never been discovered if it hadn't been for the fisherman smelling a terrible odor that day. He then checked the images knowing he would find something, and indeed we did. We found 2 greys approximately 1 meter and 10 centimeters tall, 3 feet. It's very common to see them in caves, but for some reason that night they were closer to the road. So there's a couple of interesting things there. First of all, obviously the scent, the smell thing is popping up again. This is like a recurring characteristic. And also the fact that these, like the way that they talk about them, they're like, you know, it's not even the fact that they're there that they're that surprised. It's like, it says at the end there, it's very common to see them in caves. Like, oh yeah, we see them all the time. It's just weird they're on the road. Like to them, that's the weird part. Like, what are you doing on the road? Whereas to us, it's like, holy fuck, it's a gray alien. But to them, it's just like, oh, the alien's on the road. That's weird. Anyway, so there's the context. Let's take a look at these pictures. Now, the first one, this is the original, and we're going to zoom in, and I've tried to do a bit of work in some editing software to make it look a little bit better for you. And but to be fair, these images were not the highest quality, and I don't know if I got the originals. I don't think I did, which obviously means there's compression coming through, and it just gets harder and harder to like pull it up in software. The other one, which is not as good, it's of the same spot, the same being, probably, you know, a few seconds apart or whatever. But this one is not as conclusive. I mean, yeah, you can kind of tell there. But anyway, as I said, I did try to enhance them a little bit for you. And this is what I was able to pull up. And this is where, I mean, I think this original, despite it being quite far in the distance and despite it being quite small in the frame, it's like, it just is quite compelling. It just really looks interesting. There's just something about it. I can't really put my thumb on why this just feels very real to me. And when you pull this up, you can see on the left-hand side there, I just tried to do a few different things, play with a few different values and expressions to try and, you know, view it in a different way. You can clearly see that there is something small, childlike size there with some pretty definitive dark eyes, a sort of disproportionately larger head to its body. The length of the arms is kind of hard to tell, but it really does kind of fit those characteristics that we really hear usually when we hear about greys, right? The small greys. And even like, I don't think you guys can see my mouse, but even like the way the shadows are, right? Like this is obviously quite grainy and it's hard to see, but here, actually, just so you can see me. No, that didn't work. Hello. So even like the shadowing, so this, you can see like on its hip. So the way we're looking at it, on the right-hand side of its hip, you can see the shadowing kind of hit the hip that would potentially be cast by the arm with the way the light is hitting the front of it. It's almost like the arm is casting a bit of a shadow on the hip, and obviously the body's turning away from the light. So from the limited data that we have, like the lighting and the shadows are all kind of working how you would expect them to if this was a real photo. And again, I tried to pull up this one, but you know, this one was tough. I feel like this one was a lot grainier. It feels like like a bit sort of overexposed. Yeah, and you know, it's just a tough one to work with. But you can see a lot of the similar characteristics in some of these little edits there. So those are super interesting. Like I said, there's just something about them that they're extremely compelling. I know people are still going to be mad that it's not the 4K alien orgy that we all want to see, but I'm sure that will come eventually. But it's still pretty interesting nonetheless. Now, there's a little bit more to go. So the next event that we have some photos of is from a young fisherman, approximately 22 years old, who encountered a grey. When he tried to take a photo, the grey emitted an extremely strong halo of light that almost burned the camera's mirror, and the shape of the grey can clearly be seen. So I'll show you this photo, right? That's it. Now, I put this in a bit of software and just tried to mess with the values, bump it up, bump it down, see what I could see. I couldn't. He says the grey, like the shape of it can be clearly seen. I mean, if you could point it out to me, please do. I couldn't. I really couldn't. So, I mean, if the text is to be believed and what we are seeing is what he said, it's interesting. But other than that, there's nothing really definitive here. But I thought I'd show you guys nonetheless, because it's all just part of this package that's come out, right? So one more photo to go. The third event involves several orbs, or as the locals call them, cries of darkness. This is because they say it's what remains after the Greys finish their work. We didn't fully understand what work they were referring to. However, this is a common phenomenon on the outskirts of the city after the Greys leave. Again, you're getting that kind of like presumptuous kind of language here, where it's like the weird part to them is like cries of darkness. What is cries of darkness? It's not the fact that there are Greys. It's just like, oh yeah, this is just what happens when the Greys leave. But like to us, it's like, wait, you have Greys? But to them, it's just like, oh yeah, but there's this weird, they do this weird thing called cries of darkness. It's like they're already over the fact that there are Greys around, and they're just, something else is more interesting to them, where we're still digesting the fact that Greys live around this area. So look, I just found that kind of interesting. We'll check out the photo. So again, you can't see my cursor, but I don't think everything you can see here is an orb. I think there are a few, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't live in Peru, but it looks like a few of the brighter things that are more towards the top of the frame could be the orbs. And then we're also just kind of getting some artifacts on the lens, perhaps some lens flares. And I also think, as was evident in basically all of these pictures, this person needs to clean their camera lens because it's extremely filthy and it's making it harder to work out what is actually going on here. So one more time, that is that photo. These are what they referred to as the cries of darkness, and these orbs that hang around after the Greys do their work. Now, metadata came with all of this. I'll put it up here for you guys. I'm not going to pretend like I know what this means, but I know people seem to care about the metadata, and this came with this package. Okay, so if there's any people who understand this stuff, if you do and you read it and you're like, that doesn't make sense, this all seems like a lie, please tell me. I don't want to put out videos about lies. So if anyone can like debunk this definitively, I'm happy to look at it and make another video talking about it. But I don't think that'd be the case personally, because I know where this came from and I don't think it would be put out if it was a hoax. But if you think so, go your hardest. So let me know what you guys think. As I said, yes, it's not the bright 4K alien orgy, but we're getting there. It's an interesting photo, especially considering the area and all the other weird things that go on around there. If you guys did enjoy this video, please drop it a like to help us grow. Subscribe as well while you're there, because there are going to be videos coming thick and fast, because this stuff just doesn't seem to stop at the moment, and I can't say that I'm mad about it either. So I will give a quick thank you as well to my weirdos. These are the guys who go the extra mile and support me. I want to invite everyone into our community Discord to get involved with the conversation, discuss what's going on. These guys also have their own designated space to chat amongst themselves. So that's just for the Polarity members, but the Discord is open to everybody. So guys, be kind to each other. Take a deep breath. Go out and touch some grass. Just relax. Do all the good things. Look after yourself. And I'll see you next time.